How y'all doing today? So today we're going to be doing the next entry into the beginner series, and we're going to talk about the almighty American 1100 series. So this is usually a big milestone for new pickers slash I know a lot of veteran pickers who this tends to be their kryptonite. They got some black belt pickers out there that hate these because they can be such a pain in the ass. I'm going to show you a couple of tricks that may help you along the way in some of the scenarios you may run across when you're picking these. So, I've actually built one. So, I built this one specifically with 4 pins and 4 very specific scenarios that, with the exception of one of them we'll talk about after we pick this, but they're very common scenarios that you can run across when you're picking these guys. So I'm going to show you what they look like and what you may run into if you seem to be having trouble. So, and I'm going to be doing this with 2 different tensioners just so I can actually display some of the issues you may run across. So let's see if we can set this up and keep it from focusing on my hands and not on the lock. So we're going to start with top of keyway, and I'm going to show you what some of it does and what some of it sounds like. And this isn't quite the right size tension wrench, but I don't have a 50 thousandths pry bar, so we're going to make do. That's why I'm going to be swapping between the two. So you get in there and you start finding your pins that are binding. Like I said, I only have 4 in here, so 3 is binding. So you're going to listen for your clicks, and there's going to be a distinct difference between your false clicks on your serrated pins and your actual set. So we're gonna start on 3, and we're gonna get, and I'm using really heavy tension right now just to showcase this. So 1, and you give it a little jiggle test. You got nothing. Go to 1 more click. 2. So that's 2 clicks, and we give it a little jiggle test. I feel like we might have got a little something. Let's see. So you kind of check your next pins, see if anything seems to be binding. Nothing's binding, so you go back to that one, give it another click. Alright, so you kind of heard the difference there. And now you got a little bit of a jiggle on your tension wrench, so let's move to the next one. So let's see, 1, 2. So we still got nothing binding, so back to it. Alright. Oh, we dropped. See, they are a pain in the ass, but let's go back into it. So check 1, 2, and there's a scenario in here that could be affecting it too, but we'll get to that once we get there. So let's see, 1, 2, check your next pin. Alright, so that one felt good, so let's check the next one. Nothing. Let's see, check pin 1, no, pin 1, pin 2, 3 still feels binding, so let's give it another click. Alright, so let's see. Alright, so here we go. So you kind of heard that little difference, a little bit more thud. You saw that tiny little bit of cord jump right up in here. So now we're gonna go check our next ones. 1, 2, 3 is good, so let's check 4. So 4 is binding now, so let's give it a little click. One click. We'll check our other ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we gotta keep on working 4. So we got a little click there, tiny little bit of core movement. Give it a little jiggle test. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's go back to 4. 4 still kind of going. Let's give it some more. See what it does. Alright, so you saw that little bit of extra core movement there. Hopefully that displayed pretty well on camera because I'm focusing on the lock. So let's check, let's give it all the jiggle test. So 3's got a little, 4's got a little jiggle. 3's got a little jiggle. So now I'm going to switch to bottom of keyway so I can demonstrate the scenario that you might run into when you get in this point, because I have 2 spools and 2 serrateds in here, and I have them in there for specific reasons and specific ways. So now you got your serration, you got a couple of serrated pins set, you had that core move a little bit, so then you keep on working your core and you keep checking, boom. So one moved up a little bit, and now I got a nice false set going. So now you move on to number 2, check 2, all right, so 2's got some counter rotation, all right, and one looks like it dropped, okay, boom. So now you're back in your false set, you give yourself a jiggle test on 2 is good, and then you're like, man, what's going on? I set 1's loose now, what's going on here? So let's see what's up. Alright, so you're going to go back to 2, check 2 again. Get some rotation on that. Because you're lost. You can't figure it out. Oh, there's my false set. Yeah, alright, I got my false set back. Cool. Alright. Now you're up here and you're checking everything, and you're checking your pins in the back here. Good jab drop. Good jab not. You run back through and you're trying to figure out what you did. Everything feels good. Man, I don't know what's going on. Everything feels good. What is happening? I set pin 1, I set pin 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I'm explaining to you what's happening. So let's get on 1 here and I'll show you. You see, you get the counter rotation going. And boom, it pops. Okay. So let me explain to you why that happened. So let's take this out the vise. And we'll set this down. We might take this one apart in a second. I'll show you what's going on there. So set the vise down. Alright. So now we'll pop this thing apart right quick. Sort of quick. Well, actually, I don't need to. I can actually show you here. So, what you got going on in there? Oh, let's turn it down a little bit. So what happened there is you had a keeping. Let's show you these driver pins. Where's my tweezers? There they go. All right, so you got the 2 different types of drivers that'll be in your 1100. You got these serrated drivers. I'm trying to set it up so you can actually see it a little better. Let's see if we can bring the camera up and get a good focus on it. Okay, so you got 2 different types of drivers. You got serrated drivers, and then you have serrated spools. Alright, so let's pick that one up. I want to show you that one a little closer because that one's actually important to what I'm trying to explain to you. So we can pick it up without sending it on a ride. Let's get it out here and let's grab it. These tweezers are dog shit. Okay, so your serrated spools. Let's get it to focus here. Focus is terrible. Alright, come on, stupid. Don't act like ass. Alright, so you have your spool portion right here, and then you have your 2 serrations on your spool. So the scenario that was happening with number 1 on that one that I just showed you, so let's throw this in here and let's see if we have another. See if we have a short pin to show you with. I think I kept one out intentionally for this purpose. So let's see, where is that little tiny driver pin? There it is. Okay, so what's happening is when you have a spool pin and basically a one cut, which is what this would be. So your one cut on your key would basically be one of these guys, these tiny, barely movement. So what you got going on, and we'll drop this now. We don't even need the key, but I'm gonna just take the key out. All right. So when your pin is in, and then you have a spool, serrated spool, sitting on top of it, one of the issues you can run into is that, so let's see if we can get that to focus to show you, is that, and this one's just a little bit out. So one of the issues you can run into is that your spool is so far buried that, and the one I have in there is a tiny bit shorter than that, but so when it's in there, now you're having the top of your spool bind on the Bible, and you set your serrations, then you hit this one and you pop it, and then you get a counter rotate, you get false set. So you get your false set, and then you go back, and then you find your other one, which was a normal spool setup. So let's take that out, since I only have one spool left out here. So we'll take this one out, we'll drop another pin in just to show you what I mean. So you find that, and you drop a spool in. If I can get it. Come on, stupid. Alright, y'all forgive me, I'm tired today. So when you drop your spool in there, of course it's not going to cooperate when I'm trying to show some things, and hoping we don't lose this thing. So then you get your serrated pin set, and you give that one that tiny little nick that gets it up above the Bible. So now you're in a nice false set. I don't know if you can see how that's it. So now you got your false set, and you go back 3 stacks. All right, now you find your spool, and you set your spool. Boom. So now you set your spool, and now you're still stuck in your false set. Let's get that out of there. And you're still stuck in your false set there, and you can't figure out why, because the key pin on this particular one, the key pin number 1, is now, you gotta click on it, and you gotta false set when you move. So if you're not familiar with this, you'll think, oh man, what is going on? Did I overset something? Did I screw something up? Well, no, what happened was when you did it, you had all you did was pop them 2 serrateds, that serration up into the Bible. So now you still have a false set. So you go back through and you check. And you check to make sure that everything is nice and tight. So now that this one is popped, so when you go back through and you're checking your pins before you get your setup, you go back in and you're checking. So it felt loose, but when you went to put pressure upward, you started to feel counter rotation. But you're like, man, but I set that. It dropped into this. So once you feel that counter rotation, slowly work that counter rotation out. Boom, and then it'll pop and it'll set. So that's a couple of your most common scenarios. That's what could be giving you issues with it. And if you overset something, you may not realize it, because the key pins themselves have serrations on them. So if you overset your driver, then you might be picking on these serrations. But I did notice that with the 1100s, there is a bit of a trick feel to it. It takes a little practice to get a feel for it, but the 1100 serrated drivers are not quite like you would expect. They're serrated, but every one that I've taken apart so far, let's see if we can show it, is it has a little bit thicker spot. So if you look here on the bottom, right here, see it's about, we're just going to use that for example. So you see you got a serration, and then you have this little bit of smooth before you hit the bottom. Now, when you're interacting with your driver pin, I don't have another pair of tweezers, but I'll display that here. So let's see, we'll leave that there. We'll take these two off of here. So let's bring this up. So when you're picking it, I ain't worried about all of those kind of going for a ride. When you're picking, you'll have an ever so slight area where you'll feel click, 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 and then a tiny little bit of movement before click. Very hard to gauge, but once you get a feel for it, it's not too terrible. So if you're getting immediate clicks and then you get a smooth spot and you're thinking you might have overset, you most likely haven't. So if you're getting sharp click, sharp click, sharp click, and then you get a smooth and then a little tiny bit of movement and then a click, then you're probably good there. So then there's one more scenario that happens a lot, especially with American Lock, because they love to do these zero lift pins. So you look at it like, man, I don't even have to touch that. You can so easily overset it, and you're 100% correct. But when you hear people refer to it being a zero lift, you think, oh, you don't touch it at all. Well, that's not necessarily entirely true on these guys, and let's grab that long pin there to show you. Let's make sure I get the right one. One of these two are the longer of the two. I should have kept them separate, but they got mixed in together, so it's okay. They're both about the same. This one should be the one. Let's see. I believe this is the one. Let's drop it in here into its home. Okay. So when you have your key in, that zero lift sits beautifully at that shear line. Nice and smooth at the shear line. You can't really see much of anything. But when you're picking and you have tension and there's pressure on them springs kind of pushing down, what can happen is when it's pushed down in there, it can create a little bit of a catch. Let's grab a serrated just to show you. So you can get a little bit of a catch, especially when it's an early one, to where when you're trying to run it, it's wanting to pop off. I don't know if you can hear that. So it's not quite a zero lift. It is, but it can still give a little bit of resistance. So with those guys, when you're picking them, all you got to do, and let's see if we can get a little bit of display on the core here. So when you're picking past it and you pick your other ones, as you move to it, all you got to do is just barely touch it. You ain't even got to pick it. You just brush your pick up against it as you move. Just that tiny little brush. We'll put it at the shear line. Let's see if I can get an angle in here to do it this way and show you. See that tiny, just brushing across it, that tiny little bit of movement will pop your driver pin up into the shear line, and boom, done, and it'll set it. They're very easy to overset, especially if you hit it first or early on. It'll overset, and then you'll get nothing for the rest of it. So, alright, so it's been about 18 minutes I've been doing this video. Hopefully that's a couple of little tips and tricks. And then I guess one other thing I'll show you. I don't have a marker with me, but for indexing, and there's a lot of people doing videos on it. So I mean, even I think Lady Locks even have a video of her doing it. I could be wrong, but you would take your pick and you would mark your shoulder where she sits, so you know that's there. So you'd put a little mark right there with your marker. I wish I had a marker back here to show you. I didn't think about this one until just now. And then you would come in here and you would find your last pin. So on this one, let's grab a flat pick because it's just easier to display. This one doesn't give me long, she's just kind of in the way right now. So you find your last pin and you set your key on, you set it on your key, which is thing right there. And you set it right there at about this the warding line right here. And then you would mark your pick right there where your shoulder is. You'd mark your pick, then you would move down to your next one and you would mark your pick, and so on and so forth, and you continue that on each one. And then before you start to pick it, just take it with no tension wrench and you just go through your core and just kind of work your way through your core, lining up. Set that back. And you go back in and you basically line your core up with your shoulder, however it may be. Now remember, when it's inside of a body, and that's actually an important part of that, when it's inside your body, like so, and you have your faceplate on there, the shoulder mark is going to be a little bit different. So your key is still going to be the same, but you're not marking the shoulder of the key. You're marking it, see, like you can actually still see it on this key. So see that little black mark? This is from when I first learned. That little black mark is where my pick rest is going to rest when I'm picking. So I'm going to use that as the mark along the key so I can actually identify and mark my points of impact. So that would be your first line for pin 5 right here. And then you'd move back and then you'd mark your pick again. I know that shine's kind of getting it. But you'd move back and you'd mark it and so on and so forth. And then you just take and you go through with it in there. And you go to the back and you would line up your first mark. And you check your key and you feel. And you just kind of move along. And you just work each and feel it and get a feel for that spacing. And once you feel a little bit comfortable that you can identify your pins, then you drop your tension wrench in there and start hammering it down. So with that said, that's all I got. Hopefully this will help y'all out. Y'all have a good one.